Imagine you're a kid of 12 years old and just passionate to learn about hunting, and you have the choice of two mentors. You've got a grandfather who will teach you all the finer points of shooting and set you up with a state-of-the-art rifle and teach you to read wind, how to glass, and find game at a distance and make unerring kills from far away. And you become a very effective hunter that way. On the other hand, you have a grandfather that can take you into the forests and help you connect with your roots there as a meat eater and learn about the way the deer move and the way they bed, their life cycles, how they fall in love and have fawns. Topic today is it good or bad to be a long-range deer sniper? What other things have created true hunters from the very beginning? Today I have my good friend Ron Spomer here with me to discuss this and see what he thinks. And we're going to try and give a fair and balanced look at each side of this story, because traditionally, hunters were hunters, and the tools they used to kill with were just the means to an end at the end. Today, the modern guy tends to shoot far and hunt less. Is one method wrong? Is one method more right? What do you think, Ron?
That's really a nice, challenging conjecture. How do you determine those things? I think they're all part of the whole, but we tend to split them, just as you've done now. I think that's part of our culture right now, and the way things are shaping up. I would go toward the grandfather who's the woodsman. I want Daniel Boone to teach me how to hunt.
Yeah.
I want to learn the woods and the way of the whitetail and all the secret mysteries that surround it. That is what drew me to hunting in the first place. I was always looking far down the railroad tracks that left our little village we lived in and imagining what was out there. Rivers and mountains and elk and cougars and secretive animals of the forests. And oh my gosh, that just pulled me into it. All I needed was a rifle. I didn't care what kind of rifle. I didn't know anything about it. I just needed a rifle. Probably a lever action, because all the cowboy heroes I was watching on TV were using those. And that's what I ended up with, model 94 30-30, even though the guy selling the gun at the hardware store tried to put a 243 in my hands, and I just said, what the heck is that? Not only was it a funny-looking little cartridge, but the rifle had this handle on the side of it that you had to lift up and pull back. Didn't have a lever on it. It's like, well, I don't want one of those. About 2 years later, I got one. But at any rate, I went with the grandfatherly type that would have given me the Daniel Boone lessons in the outdoors. Because once you've done that and you've got the bug and you just can't wait to get back out there and camp out and make your little house in the forest and find those animals, then you start shooting your rifle and you realize that, yeah, I can just get within about 200, 225 yards, put the dead on, and get them. All you needed, really. We didn't think about something like 300 yards. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
And it worked because it kept us coming back. It kept our interest up, and we got enough of our game. We got our deer most of the time just because we persisted in hunting. Now you can do the same thing with, as you say, rifles tuned for the long reach, and grandfathers can certainly teach their kids that. But I just don't think it's the way to start them. It's their continuing education when you can really get into that stuff. I would set them up with something simple, maybe even open sights. It's a little more challenging to learn with open sights, and I'm doing that with some of my grandkids right now. You got to figure out, what your dominant eye is, and then you got to get them to understand where you put the bead or the post in relation to the notch in the back, and on it goes. So it takes a little bit frustrating for them. You put them on a scope, and immediately they're hitting a target, and they can see it, and all the rest of it. So that's probably the way to go. But either way, I think all of the lessons that they're learning, whether they're frustrated or not, are going to pay off down the road. So I would start them that way, and I would also start them on small game, not deer.
Yeah.
But conditions for most people probably don't allow that.
Yeah.
As you can imagine.
So there's an interesting dilemma with the modern method. What I'm going to term the modern method for the sake of this discussion, with a finely set up precision rifle. And that's that many times you don't need woodsmanship. You don't need those old, deep-rooted hunter skills. And so you don't learn them. You may get very, very good behind your binocular and your spotting scope.
Yeah.
And have a state-of-the-art rangefinder that will range multiple miles and give you atmospheric data and help you understand how to hold off in winds and, of course, give you ballistic holdovers for your bullets. But how many of the hunters that start that way these days are actually returning all the way full circle to the roots of a hunter?
Oh, good point.
Whereas if you start in the woods with a simple tool and you're forced to learn those, I shouldn't say forced, it's an opportunity, a blessed opportunity that you have to learn those skills from the grounds up. And all the small signs, the ways they think, and the ways the season changed their behavior and so forth, how to stalk, how to play the wind, how to use cover, where to wait in the middle of the day so you don't disturb their habitat, and yet you're in a position where one may walk by during his lunchtime snack.
Yeah.
You know, you will grow from that into better and better equipment if you want to. You can get a little better rifle. You can put a better scope on your old rifle. You can eventually get set up with something really capable and evolve into a very, very accomplished marksman. Then I think you're the whole package. But I rarely see it go the other way around and start with precision shooting / hunting and evolve rearward into the old traditional hunting skills. What do you think of the conundrum there?
I think you're right, except for I do see a lot of the precision shooters going, this is just too easy. I know my rifle, my gear, my scope, and I can kill this animal, but am I really out here just to kill an animal?
Sure.
I'm out here for this experience, this mystery I discussed earlier. And that's what they're missing. And I think after a while they realize that. Look, I spent all of 2 hours and this deer stepped out at 650 yards and I shot him. I didn't hear him. I didn't smell him. I didn't know if he was working does or if he was scent trailing. All I know is there he is, bang, he's dead. Whoopee, aren't I a great shot? Yes, you are. You're a heck of a marksman. But do you know your wildlife? And in the pursuit of finding that deer at a closer range, you're going to bump into not only it, but several other species while you're doing it. You're going to hear perhaps a blue jay squawking and calling, and realize after a time, every time I hear that, there's another predator around. That's an alarm call for the blue jay, and the deer seem to pay attention to it. So you've learned something about nature and your role and other animals' roles in it and how it all ties together. So I just think that's invaluable, and it's also something that you're going to absorb. It's become a part of you, and you might not go home and brag about it. I heard a blue jay today, and it told me where the deer were. You're going to brag about your rifle and the bullet and the long shot you made and all that stuff. But
depends on how big the buck was that the blue jay told you about.
Or if it was sitting on his antlers when it told you.
Yes.
But things like that, I think, just add so much more meat to the hunt. It's just, and I know you know it because you've been out backpack hunting and living off the land, probably even foraging for a bit of your food.
Sure.
All of these things that turn us into that classic Daniel Boone or the Ishi, the Native American bow hunting genius, and all these kinds of things. That's the heart of what hunting is. Shooting is shooting. Hunting is something different.
And so you're saying you see hunters evolve sometimes from that precision shooting realm into where they might be happier with something like this.
Absolutely.
And they turn into what I call a method hunter. It's not a term that I started, but it's a, let's just set that one behind us for a moment.
Okay.
It's a different mentality about hunting where the process becomes more important than the result. This, for those watching, is a beautiful Ruger number 1 high grade chambered in 275 Rigby, aka 7x57 Mauser. They're sold by Lipsy's, kind of a limited run deal. This one's not mine, it's just on loan. I wish it was mine. But it's a classic single shot with a sleek little scope mounted on it, a perfect stalking rifle, and one that's going to help you focus on making that shot at the moment of truth, and probably help you be really happy with the nice 3x3 mule deer that you would have not been interested in shooting with your state-of-the-art rifle.
Yeah, you good point there. And that kind of the stage I'm in right now with my little single shot 757. It's a little bit lighter rifle. It's the Park West Arms SD10.
Yeah.
But it's also a falling block single shot, and I just for some reason love that whole concept of this falling block. This lever moves a giant block of steel up and down behind the breech of your rifle to seal that cartridge in, and it's just so slick and smooth and simple. You drop your cartridge in, you close that action, you take your shot, you slide that action back open to take your cartridge out, and you're done, one and done. It forces you to really be a hunter and choose the right shot. Doesn't mean you can't take long shots with these rifles and make them. They can be wonderfully accurate, but it changes your whole outlook, your mindset. It's not like, well, I've got a stack of 5 rounds in here. If I miss the first one, I'll try another. You just say, I better get a little closer. I better make darn sure this is the perfect shot. You take your perfect shot, you get your game, and there's just some extra satisfaction in having done that.
Sure. Do you think that the people who evolve into this method type hunting are a large percentage of today's modern precision hunter?
You know, that's a tough one. I get the impression from all of the press that I see that everybody's interested in long-range sniping rifles. But that's probably wrong, because that's what's selling these days. So you're going to see it on all the magazines and on all the podcasts and everything else, because everybody's interested in it, and they're trying to sell more rifles, more ammunition, more bullets, and all the rest of it. Whereas from what I get in response to a lot of my videos and such from readers is that they're just ordinary, what we would call country boys with grandpa's 94 Winchester 30-30, and they're just out there hunting, and they don't care about ballistics and long-range bullets and all the rest of it. It's like they're barely graduated to a scope. If you call that a graduation, they might call it just the opposite. And that's fine, because they're going out there because they cannot wait for the opening day of deer season. Whether it means you're going to camp with your family, or you're going off by yourself, you left the wife at home and the kids at home snuggled in bed, and you went out in the dark and the cold to go to your favorite little spot up on the ridge in the hardwoods, and you're tiptoeing through looking for your deer. And all the magic that comes with that, the crows calling and the turkeys gobbling and the squirrels barking, and the whole thing is just so special that they live for it. They're hunters. They don't talk about ballistics and drop and wind deflection. This is my rifle. It's my companion. It takes me where I want to go. It's a part of the program. Beyond that, I can't tell you much other than it's dependable.
Yeah. A lot of my friends growing up, they'd be handed a rifle by their hunting mentor, and they'd say, this is a good rifle. Often they didn't even know what cartridge it was when I'd ask them. I was already a bullet nerd. And they'd say, I don't know, I just aim at it and shoot, and it dies, right? And it works pretty well. You know, you're a fan and a proponent of maximum point-blank range for certain applications, and for that, it works really well. Before rangefinders, we knew when a deer was too far.
Yeah.
It was just a sense you'd gather. You might not be able to state whether it was 225 or 275 or 325 yards, but you could feel when it's too far. Sometimes we shot anyway because we really, really were overeager, right? We wanted to get that done. We'd get as close as we can because we also wanted to make the shot, and when you realize you're limited, it forces you to do your best stalking possible. And I kind of like that.
Yeah, and there was also the cost of ammunition. Even though as cheap as it was back in those days, it still was relatively expensive compared to... So you would I could lob one out there, but then I'm down one more round. I have to buy more ammo, and I spooked that buck. I think I could sneak closer and get him. So you would.
My old shooting mentor grew up hunting during the Great Depression. And his father would give him a rifle and one cartridge. And so you bring a deer back, I'll give you another cartridge. If you don't, you won't get another cartridge.
Now there's an education waiting to happen.
And so he got close and he made his shots count. Now, when he was young, he was also many, many times state champion junior precision shooter of the service rifle in the various disciplines. So I suspect he shot a lot of one-shot, one-kill deer.
Well, that raises the historic person, Elvin York, and White Feather, Hathcock, our snipers, our military snipers. Those famous guys, pretty much all of them had that background of growing up in the hills, shooting meat for the family, where you had to get the shot done.
Yeah.
There's none of this wanging away and hoping you got lucky or anything else. It was like, I'm taking one shot and it's getting one game animal for the table.
So let's follow this rabbit trail a little bit deeper and talk about the ethics of killing cleanly, because I know good riflemen that will kill very cleanly every time at 500 yards with their precision rifle. And I know hunters that don't care much about mastering shooting methods that can't kill every time at 150 yards because they've got a big flinch or bad technique or whatever the case may be. And then we can throw in there, the European methods, driven hunting. Over here, it's broadly frowned on these days to shoot at running game, and yet over there they train for it. You take a test for it in most countries before you can even get your hunting license. You need to prove that you can shoot running wild boar and other game and kill them, right? And so that's another different dynamic. But by the same token, I was in a report, little grouping after a big driven hunt in Germany once, and the hunt master came in and said, we had a very high percentage of kills right at the stand. 64% of the animals didn't have to be tracked. And they're talking with hounds, right? And I said, 64%. He says, yeah, it's really good shooting today. And I said, so you tracked 36%? And he said, oh, yeah. I said, is that normal that many are wounded and have to be followed? He said, usually more. Now, they recovered them all. They didn't lose a single animal.
Because they're using dogs.
Using dogs, blood trailing dogs.
That's another aspect of hunting, is what's hunting and what's cheating by using dogs, or cheating by using bait, or cheating by being in a elevated stand, hiding from the deer. And they've got so many layers of this. I think it's all hunting. Just because you hunt your animals with a rifle instead of a bow, instead of a spear, instead of a rock, instead of a pit dug into the ground, which one's a hunter and which one isn't? That's up to, I think, the individual. Now, as a society, as a culture, with the North American system, we've all sort of agreed that spotlighting at night was probably not hunting. That was poaching.
Sure.
And shooting them out of helicopters was poaching. And all the different rules and regulations from state to state. Some states allow you to bait for deer. I grew up where you're thinking that's cheating. You don't bait for deer. And yet, you can bait for bears. Well, what's the difference? They're both animals. Why do you get to do one and not the other? But we have to make those rules of the game, the boundaries. This is how the game is played. Here's the yard line. Here's the goal line. You're out of bounds over here. You just can't do everything you want to do.
Sure.
Because with today's technology, anybody could be a hunter within a day's training on shooting these precision rifles. They put you up in the perfect location, and now you dial your scope to this, and you hold on, and you get your wind meter out, and all the rest of the devices we use to be great shots. That's fairly easy. But are you a hunter?
Do you think it's harder to make a running shot at 60 or 80 yards than it is to make a static standing shot prone at 500 with a precision rifle?
I'd say they're about even, depending on the shooter and the training and all the rest of it. As a kid, we did that running, shooting stuff regularly, learned on jackrabbits, plentiful targets, and translated to deer beautifully. I'd been shooting running jackrabbits for about probably 3 years before I went on my first deer hunt. My first shooting opportunity as a deer, it was running flat out.
Really?
I think I took 2 shots and drilled it on my second.
Nice.
So I picked it up from the jackrabbit shooting. It's like, well, how do you learn to shoot running deer? Well, you can make running targets. Like you said, they've got these running boar targets that they run past you on a cord or a string, and you shoot at it to prove that you can do it. Well, you can train that way, too.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, guys like Jack O'Connor and all the gun writers would say, put a cardboard disc inside of an old tire and roll it down a gentle slope and then swing and shoot. And you're going to figure your lead out pretty quickly.
O'Connor used to say that a deer is just as big when he's running as he is when he's standing still. I think he actually did a disservice to a lot of deer that got shot in the butt while they're running.
Yeah, that's fairly easy to do. You don't have the right lead, but
Yeah.
it really is quite amazing what a skilled shooter can do on running game. I'm sure you've seen the videos of some of those Europeans shooting boar.
Yeah,
My
incredible.
gosh, you see a sounder of pigs come running through the woods, and this guy just drops them one after another. Bang, 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 bang. Headshots on all of them. Unbelievable.
And what's crazy is they're not just shooting targets of opportunity. Most of them are shooting selectively because they have a certain number of young they're supposed to shoot before they start shooting the adult ones. They have a different approach to management than we do here. In many cases, you won't shoot the biggest one in the group.
Boy, is that true.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my patrons is from Austria, and he is appalled at some of the things we do over here. He thinks it's highly unethical, and he says, no, over here, you not only shoot a specific animal, but you've aged that animal. You've looked at its body configuration and its overall health, and we make all these assessments before we say, this is the animal to take. And it's usually not the biggest and the bestest. You know, so a whole nother spin on ethical hunting.
Sure. A little hard to do when you've just jumped a great big bull elk in thick timber and it's shoot now or forever hold your peace.
And that's something that I sort of explained to him. I said, listen, over here, we don't have, you're probably on a 300, 400 acre estate or something. That's the only place you can hunt. And you are, as a Jägermeister, you're responsible for managing that herd. You know those animals almost individually.
Yeah.
Study them year round and all the rest of you know when it's prime. This is the year that I take out deer X. Whereas over here, you walk off into the wilderness where you've probably never been before, and you see an animal you've never seen before, and we can't ask you to start making health assessments and age assessments on every deer and elk that jumps up, like you say.
Especially public land with a lot of pressure, you rarely have the luxury of spending that amount of time examining something. Now, on a limited draw hunt, that's different. You know, we'd look for the best specimen we can find, and usually the biggest, most massive old buck or bull is on the decline. He's through his prime genetic breeding years, you know, so it would kind of align with that. But really, I don't think anybody's sitting there wondering if that 400-inch bull has you know, been alive long enough to pass along his genetics. They're just thinking, how can I get him? It's more.
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions about this genetic culling business, too. It's been proven that you cannot cull whitetails based on antler shape, size, and age or anything else. The population's too big and hunters take too few of them. It just doesn't have any impact. They even have done studies on ranches where you can control the number of deer and everything else, and did years and years of culling to try to improve the genetic quality of the deer. It didn't make any difference even then, let alone in the wild.
Populations are so...
Well, there's so many different does are at least half of the genetics, and you can't look at a doe and say, boy, that one's going to grow to you really a big buck with big antlers. How do you know what she's contributing to all of that?
Sure.
So it's just never really worked out.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there are plenty of myths about this genetics, and of course the anti-hunters lay that on us all the time. You're shooting the biggest and the best of the bunch, and you're just ruining the quality of the animals, and it's all nonsense. It just doesn't happen that way. There was a famous case of bighorns somewhere up in Canada, and they'd gotten really scrawny and small and little horns, and the hunters shot all the best big rams, and that's why now you have all these little guys. So they shut it all down. I think somebody was doing a study on it and collaring and all the usual things, and they found that when these animals, it seemed like they didn't have access because of a mine or something where they couldn't get to better grazing. But the upshot of it was when they got better forage, they got the big old massive horns like they had in the old days. Because all it takes is good nutrition and age. The genetics were still in those animals. They'd had them from grandpa and dad and down the line for generations after generations.
Sure.
And I think that's what you find with almost all of the big game that we hunt. The genetics are there, but do you give them enough time to manifest those genetics? And do they have the high quality forage to do it? And you'll see that with reintroductions. If there was a part of the country that used to have elk or bighorns and they were extirpated, and we reintroduce them, suddenly within 5 to 10 years, that population is... Everybody's talking about the massive bucks and bulls that are coming out here. The rams are like unbelievable, where we just, and the rest of the state just has average to scrawny ones. Well, it's these unutilized resource.
Yeah.
For years and years, all the vegetation was growing up there with nothing hammering it, and suddenly they bloom. It's like putting fertilizer in your garden.
Sure. Plus,
Suddenly
they'll
everything's
have
growing.
age because they're not being hunted that first period.
For several times. Yep, you bet.
So here's an interesting way to look at this. Let's say you're a professional big game guide. You have all the woods savvy. Would you rather guide somebody like you or somebody that's that crack shooter, and whenever you find him an opportunity, however challenging, he's going to close the deal? Which client are you going to pick?
That's a tough one. I think I'm going for the experienced Daniel Boone hunter because I don't worry about him taking a risky shot. Even though the long-range guy probably has it all nailed down and he can make these shots, it's always, well, really, what's the wind going to do? What a split second before you pull the trigger? That's going to change everything. And now I've got to cross that valley, climb up on the other side of the mountain, and look for a wounded animal. I'd rather have the guy miss him at 50 yards.
That was funny. So I guided big game hunters in Montana and Utah for 9 years, and with one caveat, I'll always take the good shooter. And there's two reasons. One, the good woodsman, unless he's a real kind soul with a willingness to be open-minded and learn, as a young guide, I was often challenged on methods by the old timers, and they would want to do something different. And they might be a whitetail hunter from Minnesota trying to tell me how to find that bull elk, and it didn't work ever. The dynamic there was quite interesting at times. On the flip side, if that person was wise enough to recognize he's in a totally new territory with a totally new species and very open-minded about learning, they were the ones that learned the fastest, because you show them something once, all the pieces of the puzzles clicked, right? And they became elk hunters very quickly. But it wasn't real common that type of personality came out. They usually either just wanted you to do everything for them, or they already knew how to do everything.
Yeah.
On the flip side, the really good shooters are just there. They're like, I am here to make my best shot. I've hired you to find me that shot.
So you're the hunter guide.
So yeah, and they would
just the
give
shooter.
give you that respect.
Yeah.
And when you'd find a guy like that, that's like, I've done a ton of shooting. I'm not blowing my own whistle, but I'm fairly competent at that. What I don't know is hunting. Teach me. Then we had a good time because we learned and we killed an elk.
Yeah. No, I can see that because I was that guy, that know-it-all guy, because I'd done a lot of hunting on my own, and I ended up with this young guide, and I said, what does he know? I would start off thinking he knew everything, but then I would see signs, and he'd go like, I wouldn't do it like this.
And sometimes those young guys don't know.
Exactly. I ended up with one on a sheep hunt one time. His qualifications were he grew up on a sheep ranch. What does that have to do with dull sheep, And sure enough, he had no clue on how to hunt those things. And ended up, I didn't get even a shot at an animal on it. He had approached him from the wrong way. He wouldn't pay attention to the wind, you name it. He just didn't have it. But by then, I'd already had, I probably had 6 sheep hunts under my belt for dull sheep, and I'd learned some stuff. And when you've done that and you realize that your guy just got hired, probably picked him up in the bar the Saturday before he dragged him out there because it's so hard to find and keep guides up in that hard. That's hard work.
Yeah. And this premise, of course, is coming from the standpoint where if you're the guide with the hunting knowledge, right, the deep foundation. But yeah, I've seen that myself. I went to a really good area in Nebraska with a good whitetail tag once and was put with a guide who knew all the roads very well. He could point me to where the stands were, and he mentioned there's a big buck here and a great big wide 8-point there and whatever.
Nice.
And after a little bit, but there was this slight shallow sense to the conversation. I said, you shot a lot of deer around here? And very candidly said, I've never killed a deer. I was like, wait, you're my guide in this area that's renowned for big deer? And he said, oh yeah, last night the outfitter briefed me on all these spots. Like, okay.
Yeah, that's essentially. So you've got to say there's a caveat here. I think it can obviously swing either way.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I like the old guys who are comfortable in their skin, confident in their abilities, and can say, Ron, you know what? I think you're not approaching this properly. I would come around like this and I'd say, hey, it's your hunt. You paid for it.
Yeah.
And I can't say that I think that's a bad option either. I can learn from you as well as you can
Yeah.
learn from me. Unfortunately, you're paying me.
Right. Well, the best guides I've ever worked with have just come out and right out in the beginning of the hunt and said, "Look, this is your hunt, and I want you to enjoy it, and I would like you to be as much a part of the process as you would like to be. If you want to help plan the stalks, by all means, let's discuss them and come to a plan together, and we'll go make it happen." Those are so much better than the guides that just find something like, "Yeah, that was probably a shooter," and just
Yeah.
grab their stuff and go. And you're expected to follow. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know what the plan is.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, yeah. Though with this, we're sort of veering off on this
We're
subject,
way off
but
topic.
yeah, off topic. But I think it's a valuable topic because most guys anymore are going on a guided hunt. You just can't find a do-it-yourselfers. You go on a do-it-yourself hunt in the Rocky Mountains, thinking you're going to walk into the wilderness, and you suddenly walk into a convention. People everywhere. So it's challenging. And then they go, "How do I ever get it?" You've got to go on a private ranch with a guide or way deep into a horseback camp with a guide. So you're depending on somebody with an intimate knowledge of a place you've never been to before.
Sure.
So you need to make sure you're getting a good guide, somehow figure all this stuff out. So it's kind of a combination of yin and yang, I think. You've got to be able to say, "I'm not stupid. I've got some insights. I've done a little of this before." Weigh that against this guide and what you think he knows or doesn't know. And if you see some real red flags, try to diplomatically negotiate in between
Sure.
and around those things. But I love what you're saying about the guide who does that.
Yeah.
Hey, just right up front, and ego plays into all of this.
Yeah.
A young guy wants to prove himself. You can't have an old guy come in and tell him, "Hey, kid, I appreciate you're here to guide me, but you don't know your butt from a hole in the ground. They're going to do it my way." That's not going to be a very happy week for anybody in that camp. But if you say, "Listen, I'm always open to learning some new things. I've done a lot of hunting. I've shot a dozen elk, blah, blah, blah. But, I want to discuss some of yours. What works best for you here?" And just feel him out and kind of guide him as well as the conversation and say, "Hey, humor me on this one. Let's go around the other side on this deal. I just have a hunch," or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Just as a bit of a thought for those of you listening who are wondering how to negotiate situations like this with guides, one of the things I've found is the most effective is in the beginning say, "Look, I have a very curious mind. I'm a journalist, right? It kind of comes with the territory. If you would, while we're hunting, think out loud. Just talk to me as we're going through everything you see that you observe that's interesting, that's unique. Mention it to me, and I will learn from that, and I'll love this experience." And usually that makes them kind of feel good because they're like, "Hey, he's recognizing that I know my stuff here.
Yeah, I like
and
that.
we're going to talk about it, and we're going to have a good time." And it usually works out.
yeah, I think the worst is the taciturn guide who won't say anything. Just grunts and takes off
Yeah.
walking. You follow him. You go, "Where are we going? Why are we going there? When are we going to get there?" They don't tell you anything.
Yeah.
That's frustrating as can be.
Yeah. There's a word of advice for all you guides out there.
Yeah.
How to be a better client and a better guide. This would make a good podcast. We should
We
talk
should
about
do a podcast
this sometime.
on this sometime. Yeah.
For now, back to shooting. Okay, how do we encourage people to marry those two different worlds? Become a great hunter and a great marksman.
Well, I think, was it William who said, "I want one grandpa of each"?
Yeah.
That's really pretty good. Most of us have one grandpa on each side, so try to, of course, you can't pick them, so you're
Right.
stuck. But boy, if you can get one grandpa who's the woodsman and another one who's the precision shooter, you're going to get it from both sides. That's going to be perfect.
That would be perfect. And of course, folks, right here we're using grandpa as a mentor. It could be a friend. It could be, an uncle. It could be your mom. I know some great lady hunters out there that are very good at teaching hunting because of the patience.
Yeah.
And they like kids.
Critical part of it, you bet.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. Grandpa is like the metaphor for a mentor. Mm-hmm. But if you can do that, if you can find yourself too, I guess thinking back, I kind of did. I had my shooting mentor. That's the young man that grew up hunting during the Great Depression and was a competitive shooter. And then I ran around a lot with the Kennedy boys, which one of them is still one of my best.
You didn't go to Chappaquiddick, did you?
No. Different Kennedys.
Okay.
They were a family from the Rocky Mountains who grew up hunting very, very seriously. Not well off, so they were always in old wool clothing and half worn out boots, but their dad appreciated good rifles and was a very, very good backcountry hunter. He'd get up in the high mountains. He'd take his whole family in with backpacks for 10 days sometimes. And they've told me stories about running out of food, and they did not leave until they got an elk. They'd go 2 or 3 days sometimes catching minnows out of the creeks and eating them, and just scraping the bottoms of bean cans and things. And then they'd hear the shots, and they'd know their dad had tagged one. This is when they're little. They're not even
hunting
yet.
They're just out with dad. Wow.
And so they'd drop their fishing poles and grab their knives and some matches, and they'd head for the shots. And by the time they got there, their dad would have a bunch of little trimmings off, and they'd build a big fire, and they'd roast meat and gorge themselves. It's almost like you hear the stories of the old Native Americans.
Yeah,
sometimes
or today in Africa.
They'd sit down, they'd eat 5 or 10 pounds of meat.
Yeah, I shot an African elephant for a village one time, and while they were all working on reducing this thing to a wet spot on the ground and taking all the parts back to eat, an old guy came out of the woods. And he sat down and made a little fire in the sand. Nobody said anything to him. And he went over there and he took some little trimmings off it. They have a lot of respect for old people over there. And then they just knew that this guy, he's one of us, one of the locals, and he needs some meat. He's welcome to it. So he would take slices of meat, go over to his little fire, just roast him for a little bit. Yep. Gobble him down, and he got himself full and wandered off.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this family, Jeff was the old hunter. I don't think he ever knew how much of a mentor he was to me, but I would get secondhand woodsmanship savvy through his boys. They'd always say, "Oh, my father taught us to do this with tracks, and notice this about this," and so I learned a lot of that. And then I eventually did some hunts with him and his family into this mountain country. I shot my first elk with him, and so he probably still doesn't know how much he mentored me and how much I appreciate that. But when you mention that, I guess I did have 2 mentors. Neither of them was a family member.
Yeah, and that would probably be the same for me. I mean, I had an uncle and a cousin who inspired me, a couple of cousins who were hunters. They didn't really teach me much about it. They just gave me a hero to worship, and then you pick things up when you tag along.
Sure.
I don't ever remember them saying, "Now do it like this and do it like that." It was just, "There's your 22, go shoot some rabbits," and off we went. But whether it's family or not really doesn't matter. That mentor is someone special in your life.
Yeah. And
I think the message that we surely should be putting out there is not so much to the people looking for a mentor, is the people who could become mentors. I think it's a big responsibility for us older hunters who've been there and learned the ropes and all to share that.
Yeah.
And it's a little more challenging these days with the culture the way it is. But if you can get an okay from the parents and whatever to take Susie or Johnny out shooting and learning the ropes and all the rest of it, they need that. They need a responsible adult to make them toe the line and learn the important, significant parts of all of this, working with tools that, like a chainsaw or a vehicle or any of these tools that we commonly use. Their use of a rifle is as serious a business as they're learning to drive the family car.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you layer in the woodsmanship that they're not going to get while they're growing up in their suburban backyards. That's going to involve getting out to the country, getting out to a farm or a ranch, and learning some whole new aspects of life, because you just don't grow up in the urban areas and the suburbs where the vast majority of our population now lives. How are those kids going to learn all this stuff?
Yeah.
They've probably never even tried to seine minnows out of the creek.
Yeah. It's a funny thing, but I think it's important to teach kids, even if they're city kids that are coming to the country for the first time and they're breaking their nails and they lost their makeup and whatever, you got to find a way to teach them that getting dirty is fun.
Yeah.
When I had my little kids around, I tried to never make that break between eating dirt is awesome to civilization. Like, I just kept them thinking eating dirt was awesome as long as I could. And by then they were like building fires and eating meat with dirt on it, right?
Yeah. So now I suppose when they're at the lunchroom in high school, they're getting laughed at for sprinkling dirt on their food.
Well, it has a certain flavor. I mean, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to say that, there are kids that grow up and they're taught to be squeamish.
Yeah.
They're taught to abhor being dirty. or
Got that
just
right.
being in a dirty environment. And I don't mean dirty like full of bacteria and mold and contamination. I mean
Just natural.
earthy,
Yeah.
mosses, leaves, the scent of autumn leaves that you're burrowed into. You're going to get dirty. You're going to have crumbles of leaves on you.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I saw this recently. I was working with a friend of mine with a couple of young boys, took them fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And the one was just dive right in, grab that fish, and investigate, look in its mouth and everything in it. And the other kid wouldn't touch it.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, ew. He didn't
Yeah.
even want to put a worm on the hook. That's kind of
Right.
the classic. The girl wouldn't put it on. Well, this was the guy, and he didn't want to put a worm on the hook. And stuff happens like that. But it is because of the environment, I think, in which they are raised. Everyone wants to have a nice, clean home, and we're all germaphobes anymore. Everything has to be
Yeah.
antibacterial. And it's like, ooh, get out of that dirt. That's dirty. Don't touch that, Johnny.
Yeah.
And that's just, you're right. You've got to let the kid get in touch with nature.
Well, we recently taught our elk hunting boot camp course, and during the course, we actually slaughtered and did the gutless method of quartering off a sheep, right, to teach people. It's a lot smaller than an elk, smaller than a deer too, but all the body parts fit the same. And so we slaughtered this sheep, we cut it all apart, took it off in quarters, pulled the back straps, dove in for the tenderloins and everything. And then at the end, my daughter Audrey was there, said, I want to cut off the head. And of course, there's 40 men standing around that kind of went, their
little
eyes
aghast to
widened a
know
little
that-
bit. So she took out her knife. She stepped up there and she wrenched this ram's head this way or that, hacking and slashing. They gave it a good twist and it made that big pop coming off.
Yep.
And then she stood up with her bloody knife in one hand and this ram's head in the other. And everybody just busted out clapping. All these guys. And I've got a picture that somebody just happened to snap in that candid moment. Audrey's realized suddenly how she looks. And so she's kind of laughing and wrinkling her nose up. And I sent the picture to my family. William wrote back and said, without context, it looks a little cultish.
Cultish?
But the fact was, they were just shocked to see this pretty little 18-year-old girl with long blonde hair blowing in the wind dive in and get bloody and wrench the head off this thing. This part of the process has to be done.
Yeah.
you know?
I've seen some really interesting videos. There's some young woman up in Alaska who must work on a commercial fishery or works for an outfitter, but she's filleting the fish and putting them on ice. And she's a master at it. So you got this attractive woman and you think, what's she going to do? And she just grabs those fish, slimy things, and slice, whack, bang, and the guts flying everywhere. And just, that's her job. She's not squeamish. She doesn't pretend. So many women, it seems like, and even young men these days, they take sort of satisfaction in showing how squeamish they are. I wouldn't touch that. That kind of attitude. And it's just so foreign to real world. I guess it works in this man-made environments we all live in.
That's because we never have to get dirty to eat. Back
Think
in
for
the day,
yourself.
would you have to?
Pretty much.
I think if you're forced to dig your food out of the earth or to cut it up yourself and then put it on the fire, you learn that it's not just okay, it's actually an admirable and respectable part of the process.
Yeah.
So back to shooting. Is long-range sniping at deer as respectable as stalking inside 200 yards?
That's another challenging question, Joseph. For the guys who do it and practice religiously, et cetera, and then there's the guy who gets buck fever and is afraid of his rifle and can't hit him at 100 yards. Why does he get the hero status? Because he held off and didn't take a longer shot. Well, he couldn't even hit the short-range shot, so why should he get to take a long-range shot? Whereas the guy who's trained and practiced and he can every time kill one at 500. But as we've discussed before, it's the time of flight issue and the animal moving. The wind is a big part of it too, but you can even get pretty darn good at calling your winds and everything else. But golly, when you say, it's go time and you press that button, there's enough lag of milliseconds in there for everything to happen that animal very easily can just dip its head or take a step forward and you've turned a perfect shot into a wounding shot.
Yeah.
So I think you got to come down to that. Somewhere in that 500 to 600 yards is about as far as you want to stretch it.
Yep.
Even though you can hit things on steel plates at 1250, you're not worried about that plate taking an extra step.
Yeah. And there's no ethical responsibility if you miss a plate. You've just
That's
learned
right.
a lesson is all.
Yep. And another thing about ethical responsibility, I don't get too worked up over that because every predator ends up wounding and losing animals. I've seen springbuck in Africa with big raking cuts on their faces where a leopard or something has made an attempt at him. Had big gaping wounds on their back and different things where they've escaped the best intentions of a natural predator. And I always say humans are natural too. We're not gods. We're here on this earth. We have the same blood and limbs and need for oxygen and water as every other animal. We've just got this incredible brain, and I like to say we have a special soul that matters for different things. But as far as functioning within nature, we too are a part of nature, so we are going to make some mistakes.
Sure.
I think we strive to not, and that's why we're so doting on our bullets and cartridges and precision shooting and training and all the rest of it, because we don't have the natural skills that the lions and such do. So it's important for us to work at all that stuff and decide what's going to work effectively. But using our knowledge of trajectories and bullets and all the rest of it, we've got to set some limits.
Do you know, I think we're the only predator that feels bad for the animal when we don't succeed.
Yeah.
The others feel bad for themselves because they're not eating now.
Yeah.
But I don't think they display any guilt.
No. They don't even know what guilt is.
We do.
Yeah. That's interesting because I so often read from anti-hunters who say the human animal is the only mistake nature ever made. Because we're just horrible. We screw everything up. We can't do better than nature. Nature knows best. And yet we're the only predator that thinks about our prey, is concerned about its welfare, tries to make a clean killing shot, whereas a lion and wolves, for instance, they're happy to gang up on an innocent little something or other. And they don't care whether it's a newborn or a pregnant female or an old male. They just want to kill things and eat them. It's selfish. That's what nature is. You have to be selfish to survive. Humans are the only one that strives to be better than that. And our culture has accepted this crazy idea that we're the evil ones because we kill an animal and we have an unfair advantage with our technology. So you really can't win. If you use the best technology available to make the safest, cleanest kill, you're evil for cheating.
Yeah.
But if you go out with a spear, you're cruel.
Right.
Well, it's nonsense. But I think hunters can be justifiably proud of striving to really be effective hunters and shots and doing everything right and paying the price for it. And holding off and showing like we're not going to go hunting every day that we want to go. We're not going to hunt at night. We're not going to take advantage of the spring season. We're going to let the animals repopulate and all the things that we do within modern conservation hunting that the antis refuse to understand is that. And that's why we still have game today despite the destruction of habitat and the incredible increase of humans on this planet that have taken away millions upon millions of acres of useful wildlife habitat. It's no longer there.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Ron, I know you still like to shoot a big buck or bull, but you have this special rifle that you've kind of gravitated toward hunting with these days. You mentioned it earlier. For those who aren't familiar with it, talk a little bit about it.
Well, it is a falling block action like the Ruger, like the old Farcarzan, Sharps. There are a lot of falling block rifles over history. But this one is sort of I think the epitome of the evolution of that design. It's incredibly sleek, no visible screws anywhere on the outside of it. It's called the Park West Arms SD-10. It was initially introduced by Dakota Arms as the Model 10. Park West picked up the remnants of Dakota after it went under, given Remington. Remington had picked it up, and then when Remington went under, all of the other ancillary companies within it went under. Dakota was one of those. So when the new investors bought it, they found out that for some legal reason they couldn't use the word Dakota anymore. So they came up with the name Park West, and then changed it from the Dakota Model 10 to the SD-10 for South Dakota 10. So this is a little single-shot rifle, a little bit slimmer and trimmer than the number 1.
Yes.
And it is chambered for the 757 because I didn't necessarily love the 757 for any magical ballistical reasons, but it's got this incredible history and tradition behind it in Africa as well as many other countries. And it's just got a certain allure to it that I thought fit beautifully with that particular style of rifle. And the whole idea is that I've been around enough and hunted enough and shot enough game that I don't really need to kill everything that I aim at. I need to be selective. And I want to enjoy my time of field. And having this little 6-pound trim rifle in my hands, that's just a delight to carry. And beautiful workmanship on it with incredibly gorgeous exhibition grade walnut that you pay a lot of money for, that does no different than a plain walnut, or not even as good as a synthetic probably.
It brings joy to your heart.
Brings joy to your heart. I can sit there and look at that rifle and enjoy my whole day,
Yeah.
take a picture of it. It's my trophy for the day. It's just so much fun. So yeah, I have been hunting almost exclusively now with that rifle for 3 years, taking it again to Africa 2 times this year. And like last year on one hunt, I shot 1 impala. But I carried that rifle every day, and I was just anticipating shots at whatever might pop up, and didn't really need to hunt and shoot that much. Just needed to be out there going through the motions.
Sure.
And knowing that when it all came together, that one precise shot with that sweet little accurate rifle was going to do the job, and I could be quite satisfied and happy with the outcome, and that's the way it worked.
Sure. Very cool.
You know what we should do someday, Joseph? You said that's chambered for the 275 Rigby.
It is, yeah.
That's the same cartridge as the 757
Sure.
Mauser, just a different name. And they're both falling blocks, and yours is a pretty good looking rifle. we should do a little video work with those two.
Yeah, we should.
We could then show how they work and how they differ, slight though that it might be, and then shoot them and just kind of demonstrate why we enjoy those rifles and how they work, and why someone might want to look into that. And I think it's probably not going to appeal to the 20 to 40-year-old hunters so much as the 40 to 70-year-old hunters who have been there and done that a few times and really can start to appreciate it. But I've bumped into some young people who are like that same kind of tradition.
Yeah.
So there's lots of opportunities.
Well, and it seems to me like there are people that love having a rifle like this and dreaming about hunting with it, even if they go pick up their synthetic stocked modern 7mm for the hunt. Someday they're going to take that out of field, and they treasure it, and they cherish it. They shoot it now and then. For me, would I set my kids up with this rifle to start hunting with? Probably not. I mean, yeah, we'll teach them to hunt close. It's a single shot, so they have to be sure of their shot and so forth. But I will say that here, in the West, public land, high pressure, I want my kids to be able to shoot lethally and accurately and a little further than you and I grew up hunting, because that may be the only chance they get. So, I'm one of these weird crossover guys that loves both. I've got state-of-the-art carbon fiber and titanium custom rifles that shoot itty-bitty groups, and these dial-up scopes that you can reach way, way out there, and I'm very, very confident with them. And I love hunting with them for the confidence it brings.
Yeah.
But I will say they don't carry the soul that a rifle like this does.
Yeah, I think
And
you've
so,
got it.
Yeah, I love getting out with something like this. Well, thank you, Ron. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, one final thought. Since you love getting out with that, and I love getting out with mine, we should take them to New Zealand the next spring, and folks can join us.
That is not a horrible idea, Ron.
Where are they going to find out more information about this potential spring hunt in New Zealand?
Yeah, so follow along on my Patreon page is the best way to get the immediate, first look at the information. We post most of our hosted hunts there first. So that's just the Backcountry Hunting Podcast Patreon page. And then the other is Global Hunting Adventures. You can just Google it, go there and click the contact page and let us know what you're interested in. And we'll send you a response with some opportunities. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that one.
I am too. We have a lovely old guide over there named Jeff. I say old. He's probably younger than you, if you can believe that.
Well, he's still old then.
Was really looking forward to guiding you, because he's been a long time follower of Ron Spomer Outdoors, loves your work, loves your taste in rifles. He loves a 6.5x55 himself and reloads and so forth. I think you guys are going to have a great time. If I were to offer a final thought, it would be this. It's always been my creed throughout my life to be the best hunter I can be, so I can get as close as possible to make that shot. and at the same time, the very best marksman that I can be, so that if that distance isn't very close, but it's the best I can do, I can still make that shot. And it's worked out pretty well over the years. It gives me dual passions and pursuits. To become a good hunter and to become a good marksman is a beautiful thing. And it's a great combination, because the hunter part of you thrives on it, cherishes getting close in those experiences. And the marksman part of you gives you the confidence that when the opportunity comes, you can be, you can close the deal at the moment of truth without worry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's treated me pretty well.
Yeah, you get satisfaction both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the important part is practice, train, practice, get as good as you possibly can, and know your limits.
Yeah. And this is actually applies to hunting as well. Know your limits on how much exposure can you take? How big a mountain can you climb and make it back before dark?
You got it.
Train by scouting, off-season scouting. With your rifle, train by off-season shooting. Know your limits by testing them, shooting as far as possible on steel plates, and then recognizing where the wheels fall off.
Yep.
All right. Thanks again, Ron. This has been fun. I always enjoy visiting with you, and our listeners do too. You're a very popular man.
Well,
on the Backcountry Hunting Podcast.
I appreciate that, Joseph. And I enjoy working with you on these projects. It's nice to get inside your mind and see how we've sort of arrived at similar places in our lives because of what we do and the way we do it. And it's always fun to share that with folks. And I like hearing from people who have heard our podcast and or seen our videos. I learned some important things from those folks, and when they weigh in on something I hadn't thought about before, it's always good to get new perspectives. So Don't hesitate to write in, folks, and chew this guy out for the stuff he does wrong.
That's right. We always accept feedback, good, bad, or ugly.
Yeah, got it.
Thanks for tuning in and watching, folks. I'm Joseph Von Benedict here with Ron Spomer, and we'll see you in the backcountry.